Good evening. We're live in the UK. It's 8 p.m. Of course, I've got the UK's top nutritionist as seen on TV, but he's on a satellite somewhere a long, long way away. So if the signal is a little bit choppy, we do apologise. I'm in a different room, so I can't get the lighting right and I can't get the sound right. But anyway, it's going to be a good one tonight. So, Richard, how are you?
Very well. Stephen, it's always a good one. We always make it work regardless of wherever we are. I thought your background looked different. I thought maybe you'd put the medals or something up. I thought something new, but you're in a different room.
Yes, but I also do have my medals behind me. That's true. They're all the running ones where people think I'm anti-running. And that's when I won my tennis tournament, my singles tournament. That's me getting my first degree, which was an honours degree in literature. So, yeah, I fancied just a change in the backdrop. And there we go. We're here. But I'll get that sorted out properly. We got lots of questions and lots of people saying hello and all that sort of stuff. If you want to get your questions jumped to the front, of course, you can always do a super chat. But we will get to it. And, of course, now I'm in my 60s, I've got an excuse to not be good with the tech. And I'm really enjoying being in my 60s, to be honest. It's great. I can actually say it. I'm in my 60s. Right. So Gemma's got a question here. And I might do a bit more of the talking in between. Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Yes. There's a bit of a delay, which is why I jokingly said Rich is in a satellite. So Gemma's got a two-part question, Rich. Moving on to carnivore diet hasn't been easy, and I've been struggling to consume enough calories, or let's just say enough food. To help with this, I've started to eat some macadamians, being the only lectin-free nuts. Is this okay, or would it be advisable to find another way of adding food? I work long hours and find that having access to carnivore-friendly foods is very difficult at times. It is better to try and do carnivore foods. It's really that simple, because you would just get more nutrients, better fats, those sort of things. My first question would be, why do you think you're not eating enough in the first place? Don't get hung up. Just make sure you're eating, when you're hungry, and stop when you're full. But there's plenty of things you can do. You can cook some steak and you can then chop it up, and you can have it cold with a little bit of tallow and some salt, or some beef dripping if you're in the UK. There are most of the meats you can have cold, to be honest. Which, if you like ribeye, like sirloin, if you like ground beef, you can have that. If you're brave, you can have it raw, or even the ground beef, the minced beef, if you want, with a bit of butter and salt. But anyway, Rich, what do you think about macadamia nuts, or do you think carnivore first?
So look, again, we cover this pretty regularly in regards to, what is animal health. I would always say that animal health is animal proteins first and foremost. Always try to preference animal proteins, and you've given some fantastic examples there on snacks that you can eat on the go. Eggs is another one. I don't know if you did say that, whether I missed the signal, but boiled egg. I boil 6 eggs every day. I leave them in the pan. I drain the water out, and I'll take those with me in a Tupperware box. And I'll munch those throughout the day if and when I need a snack. Cheese works really well with me. This is a grey area on carnivore, but cheese works really well. Generally, once we've healed the gut, the casein within the cheese tends not to cause problems with people once they've gone through that gut healing process. Gemma is right. Macadamia are one of 2 nuts that I know of that are lectin-free, the other being a pili nut. So they are lectin-free. So not going to cause that intestinal permeability. What I would add to that is that they do contain phytic acid, which can block the absorption of other nutrients that go through the digestive process. I would also add that the omega-3 content within this doesn't really exist. The omega-3 content in nuts is ALA, is EPA, excuse me, and DHA. And in order for us to obtain those, we need to convert the ALA into EPA or DHA, and we do so inefficiently, close to 0 is converted. So try prep animal proteins. And again, eggs, cheese, fantastic. Jerky is another thing, or salami sticks. You know, if you're on the road, I'm on the road. I'm in a hotel room. I'm away this weekend. I competed today in a 10K race. I will get onto that a little bit later if we've got time. But for me, stopping in the services, perfect example. On our way to the PHC last weekend, and you know, you stop in the services, you pick up some cheese, sliced meats. There's king prawns and olives, but you do need to be careful when you do this, because lots of the service stations do contain vegetable oils. But I'd always try to often look for those options over macadamia. But look, there are far worse things to consume. We're all on our own journey. I haven't consumed a macadamia nut since I can remember. Would I? Possibly if I wanted to, but I would preference the other foods first. And I've seen a comment pop up as we were just talking about that you can't stick calories, which is 100% accurate, you know. But I mean, let's use it in the term that people understand. A calorie doesn't really exist in the form that we believe it to. If we've got time, we can go into detail in regards to that. But let's think of it as nutrients, as you say, Steve. To which I would bounce that back to Gemma and ask why does she believe that she isn't consuming enough nutrients, enough energy? You don't need to consume as much volume on a carnivore lifestyle, because the animal protein is so nutrient dense. Animal proteins contain everything that you want, every vitamin and mineral, every amino acid, as well as all the fats that we need, not just to survive, but thrive. Every cell in the body is made of protein, every cell in the body is made of fat. That piece of meat, that animal protein that we're consuming, allows the body to perform all of the work. We don't need any additional. And what we find is that the fats and proteins satiate, fill us for longer. We need less volume to carry out the same amount of work, if that makes any sense. If there are side effects of feeling lethargic, then, you know, this would be up in the fats. You know, and I would opt again for things like, you know, animal fats, fattier cuts of meat, eggs again, omega-3s from sardines, the mackerel, salmon are fantastic sources. You could even add double cream. I would rather see the cream going into a coffee or even just drinking it, you know, in as it is. So I've done this weekend. You know, I've got a coffee there, which is full of double cream. This was full, and I don't drink double cream often, but I'm on the road. I think I earned it today with the run that I performed today. So lots of double cream going. So there's lots of other things. But yes, I think the question that you've asked is pertinent. What makes you think that you're not consuming enough energy?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you know, just if we just talk about protein, for instance, just as an example, 1,000 calories, alleged calories, which is a unit of heat, by the way, that has no mass. Let's say a pound of protein is not used for energy. It's going to make structure in the body. So if you did use calories, just for those that are new to this, they're very different to the calories from fats, for instance, which, yes, some of the fats will make structure in the body, but some of it will be used for energy. Or carbohydrates, which is going to be used for energy, because it's not essential. We make our own, but if you consume it, it's just going to be used for energy or excess energy, so fat storage. So that's all that's about. Right. So Rich, your appearance is obviously rocking the house at the moment, because we've got Ribeye Rob saying you're looking tanned and you've had a haircut, and also asking about what Tom's saying. What's the story behind Richard's tattoos? Did he get them before or after losing weight?
So, in answer to the first thing about being tanned, I'm not. I did a race this morning, and I'm still feeling a little bit flustered off the back of it. It was incredibly hot. I think it's just flat lighting if I am looking tanned. Unfortunately, although I am a lover of the sun and I do use sunbeds, I go rain quite literally in regards to food. Pun intended, but I also, in regards to UV light from sun, I think they are beneficial. Secondly, my hair needs a cut. It's incredibly long. I have taken where's the scissors? I had some scissors out here. I had chopped loads off because I cut my own hair, but it does need a proper cut. What was the third thing? The tattoos.
Tattoos, yeah.
So I began my tattoo journey when I was clinically obese. The first tattoo that I had was my daughter, who is over there on the bed. Good.
Oh, cool.
Keeping this up. And Steve just dropped out. Here we are, back again. From that, I've had Summer's name across the bicep. I've basically had most of my top right half covered, but they all mean something. Most of them are related to my little girl, date of birth and time of year that she was born, and so on and so forth. But it all stems from the portrait of my little princess.
Cool. Excellent. Right. Tam has written.
Sorry, Steve.
Sorry, go on.
I have come away a little bit from the tattoos. When I began competing, after I'd lost 107 pounds and reversed the diabetes and so on and so forth, I began having the tattoos, and then I began to compete. And I sort of regretted having some then, because it did detract from some of the definition. But now that I've come away, I'm glad that I've had them again. So it's mad how it's done a full 360 in regards to wanting them, then maybe not wanting them so much, and then coming. But now that I've lost like 20k and gone into running and cycling, yeah, I'm happy that I kept them.
Yes. So I'm going to apologise if it sounds like I'm talking over Rich, but because it's choppy, and if it goes a bit quiet, I need to just jump in. So yes, apologies, Rich, if I'm being rude. I'm just trying to sort of fill the gaps because we're live. But anyway, what a great bloke. You know, he's miles away. He hasn't got internet, but he still gets on and does the lives. So I think that's dedication. So we'll give him a little bit of leeway on the bad signal at the moment. Right. Tam has written, can I please ask, how do I cancel? I don't know what you want to cancel, but yes, he ask, tell me what you want to cancel, and I'm sure we can cancel it. Are you saying cancelling the rain that we're getting everywhere? Because I'd like to do that. Right. So Yari, maybe. Any problems for consuming MCT?
Yeah.
For consuming MCT and exogenous ketones at the same time?
No. Yari, great to see you on. Yari's acclaimed him. Fantastic gentleman. We're going to be recording a podcast. He's lost a stupid amount of weight. Super strict guy. Looks absolutely incredible. Amazing. But no, Yari, I recommend that you consume the exogenous ketones with MCT when you can. When we consume exogenous ketones, we artificially ramp up ketones within the from an exogenous source. By doing so, it almost switches off endogenous production because the body no longer needs to produce it. That said, when it does this, the body wants more. So now the exogenous ketones come out of the system, and when this curve takes place, the body begins to ramp up specific enzymes and pathways which allow greater ketone production. So taking exogenous ketones can elicit a further or more elevated response in regards to ketone production after those initial exogenous ketones have been processed in the body. The pathways are the MCTs, the monocarboxylate transporters, not to be confused with medium chain triglycerides. And the pathways, you've heard me mention a number of times, BDA, Cat and Scott. When you consume C8 MCT, and it must C8, the C10 doesn't work so well. If you're not consuming just C8, it's a blend of C10 and C8. The C8 is sent straight to the liver through the portal vein. It breaches the cytosol on the cell, and it enters mitochondria almost immediately, within minutes. Basically, it doesn't go through the normal digestive process. And those MCTs almost instantly converted into beta-hydroxybutyrate, which signal the body to increase endogenous production. So MCTs are telling the body to increase endogenous production. Exogenous ketones are telling the body to stop endogenous production. But the production that you get from the MCT is a lot less than the volume of BHA that will be coursing through your veins if you take it exogenous, about 3 times higher depending on the dose. So there's benefits to both. But when you co-consume both, and I don't know the mechanism, I've looked for it. I don't think anybody knows it. At least last time I was investigating, nobody knows or can explain the mechanism. But when you co-consume CMCT with an exogenous exogenous ketones, it synergistically ramps up ketone production at a higher rate than if you were taking the MCT on its own, and it prevents, when you co-consume it, that switch off with the exogenous ketones. So there's benefits to taking one or the other, but the benefits are massively enhanced when you co-consume, depending on what your goals are. But I regularly add C8 to my exogenous ketones.
Cool. Yeah. You got my scientific brain working, and I wanted to come up with a hypothesis straight away, but I won't. I'll have a think about that. If you've not got to the bottom of that, I'll try and get to the bottom of that for you. Right. Paul is asking, I'll answer a little bit, Rich, before you dive in. I started walking 2 miles a day. I have 2, 3, 5, and 8 pound dumbbells. How best can I use them to decrease my blood glucose? I eat 0 carbs. If you're talking about exercise, when you exercise, your blood glucose will go up because your body's demanding more energy. Blood glucose is not something to be feared. It's something to be aware of. It being elevated in inappropriate pathological ways, not physiological ways. So exercise will raise your blood glucose. So if you're walking 2 miles a day and at the end of it you're thinking, oh wow, that's pushed my blood glucose up a bit, that's pretty normal. What happens when you exercise? You get more receptors translocating from the cytoplasm, the bit in the cell that's in the middle. It goes to the membrane and it opens up the cell to receive more glucose as well. So you become more insulin sensitive. Or another way is you can use the glucose you do have, you can use more easily. So that's just my 2 pence. If you're talking about walking with the dumbbells, I don't think you are, but obviously you could try to do that. That would make the exercise harder. But how can I best use them to decrease my blood glucose? Well, what you're talking about is the after exercise effect or the training response. And then the best way is to do some resistance training. I do offer exercise programs, but maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Maybe Richard's got a different way of answering it.
Yeah, I think Paul is maybe looking to further reduce any blood glucose. And again, I mean, Steve, being the phlebotomist, you'll repeat this, I'm sure, that there is no set range. We get told to we should be operating between specific ranges, but blood glucose is there for a reason. Overtraining can increase cortisol and adrenaline, which will lead to an increase in glucose. So overtraining can be counterintuitive. So if you are walking, is fantastic. If you are using dumbbells, try not to train longer than 45 minutes, an hour tops. We don't need an hour and a half and 2 hours, unless you're a pro athlete and you're looking to improve and compete in a specific sport. And we don't need to be overtraining. Making sure that cortisol is correctly put back into place, if you like, because after training, this will still elicit a response. This is how you measure blood glucose or ketone levels. Ketone levels will come down after training. Blood glucose will go up. It'll go up during training, and it can stay elevated for prolonged periods of time. So don't test blood glucose around training. Don't test blood glucose or ketones around meal times either. When we consume food, for example, this increases malonyl coenzyme A, which blocks the carnitine shuttle. It blocks CPT1 and its ability to send fatty acids for beta oxidation, which means there's no ketones being produced. At least they are suppressed, giving the impression that no ketones are being produced. And where was I going with that? And don't test first thing in the morning. Something called the dawn phenomenon. Cortisol and blood glucose can increase early in the morning. The best time to test is just before bed. You could use a continuous blood glucose monitor, but there are pros and cons to doing so. Training short and sharp. Just try to do 30, 45 minutes, hour tops, hard and fast, And I think it's as simple as that to begin with. There are other things that you can do in order to further build muscle and increase lipolysis. But I think probably a talk for another day. We could probably take up an entire hour going into M2 activations, reset, and optimal protein allowance, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, don't compare your blood glucose to when you weren't exercising or you were overweight or whatever, because when you start to be more active, your body might demand slightly more blood glucose. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. This is the thing. We've got to get into the difference between pathological, which is inappropriate, elevated, chronically elevated blood glucose, compared to when it's normal and it's demand driven. So someone that's an athlete might actually, and I've got this very situation where their average blood glucose has gone up slightly. I think it was something like 88, and now it's 93, but their activity is through the roof, whereas they never used to be able to do any activity. So you could argue, oh, well, my blood glucose is worse. I mean, that is a small amount. That's not even 1/10 of a teaspoon of blood in like 5.5 liters of plasma. So it's a really small amount, but that person's activity is just so much more than it used to be. Anyway, right. Okay, next question is from Gaza. Is beef protein powder unpleasant tasting? I'm looking to swap it in place of whey to reduce my dairy consumption, which is a great question. I have a beef protein powder. I have a chicken protein powder, and they are not unpleasant because the beef one tastes of beef and the chicken one tastes of chicken, which is not me being facetious, but it might not be what you want if you're looking for, say, a protein shake, because you're used to it being vanilla flavored or chocolate flavored or neutral, not having a flavor, or vanilla or whatever. Obviously, if you use the protein powder that's from beef, it is beefy. But there you go. So it's a bit more like having a broth type of thing, but with a lot more protein in that. What about you, Rich? What do you want to say?
Yeah, protein isolate is going to be superior to a whey-based. The one that I currently manufacture is casein based. It's far better on the gut body than any others on the market because it's devoid of all the nasties. That said, it is casein based, and a beef isolate is going to be more beneficial. I have produced one, or in fact, I've produced two flavors and an unflavored. I just don't currently have the funds to allow me to put these into production. But watch this space; they will be produced shortly. But yes, you get flavored, as you say, it is beef flavored. They contain stevia and a few other compounds that are the nice taste to the majority of the market. But for carnivore, then unflavored isolate is going to be perfect.
Cool. That's great. Yeah, so somebody said they can hear me great, but Richard's internet is choppy, so you might have missed the beginning. Richard is remote. He's been doing a run today. He's not in enough odd office. It would have been easy for Richard to say, I can't make it tonight, bud, but he's got on. So we'll put up with the sort of bad internet for now and just appreciate the fact he's here. I certainly do. Gemma's apologising. She'll be more careful about using the word calories. It's okay. It's an easy thing that people fall into. It's not a problem. It's not a problem at all. Here's one, and it's one I wish I had a little bit of a quick off-the-cuff response to. I don't have it to hand, but D. Marshall says, are you aware of any studies that compare carbs versus ketones for sports performance? I'm thinking Rich might have one off the top of his head or something to say on that.
Yes.
And as he was about to say it, and his picture was brilliant and his internet looked really good, he's gone, which is basically what happens sometimes. You just get your internet cut off, and I'm sure he'll come back on. So D. Marshall will come back to that because I'm sure off the top of his head he will remember a study. Don't forget, this is live, and I hate to misquote things, so I like to be able to get one close at hand. But I think while we've got this choppy internet, I'll just have to come back to that. Right. But anyway, we will come back to it in a minute when Rich is back on, because I'm sure he will. So Rinus said, do you recommend taking iodine or iodine, depending on where you live and how you pronounce it, on the carnivore diet? Well, you know, people don't necessarily need to take iodine or iodine on any sort of diet, and some people do. If you are not getting enough iodine, then you are going to have problems making thyroid hormone, because it's one of the things that is definitely needed. It's a cofactor to be able to produce thyroid hormone. So first thing, make sure you're getting enough, and from food sources is always a better thing than, say, for instance, from a supplement, because you're going to get it in a more natural form. It seems to be more bioavailable, right? So that's first thing. Secondly, what's making you think that you might need to take it? Well, it could be because you've got thyroid issues. That's the normal reason people ask this question, and that's fine too, because there's many people out there taking some iodine and finding that their thyroid issues are much reduced, if not resolved, in many cases. You can do a test called an iodine clearance test, but not many doctors will recommend it. And that's basically where you drink a set amount of you have a set drink which has a certain amount of iodine in, and over 24 hours they monitor your urine, and then they see if it's basically being excreted out. So let's say, just to make the sums easy, there's 100 units of iodine in the drink, and over the 24 hours you urinate out 100 units of iodine, then you probably don't need to supplement, because your body's ridding itself of that excess, and that's called the iodine clearance test. Not many people talk about it. It's basically because I've been doing the phlebotomy for a long time. I do know a bit about tests that you can do, and we will get back to Rich in a second. He has just popped on in the backstage. I'll let him put his camera where it wants to be, and we'll bring him back. And we'll come back to that question on iodine, but we'll go back to D. Marshall and get Richard's question. Are you aware of any studies that compare carbs versus ketones for sports performance?
Off the internet, apologies. Yes, as I did start to say before my internet unkindly tuned out, I've done a fantastic hour-long presentation on athletic performance in regards to being ketogenic versus carbs. If you go to the YouTube channel, there is tons and tons of studies that I've referenced within there which show undoubtedly which is superior. It's through a number of mechanisms. It isn't just ketones themselves are 4 times or 400% more efficient at creating energy than glucose is. And then we have other factors in regards to the anti-nutrients that are co-consumed when we consume excess amounts of carbohydrates in the forms of fiber, phytates, and lectins, which block the body's ability to heal and repair effectively. But when we look at ketone production, along the electron transport chain, we convert NAD plus to NADH, and this involves from glucose 4 NAD plus conversion to NADH for one glucose molecule. This conversion is 1-to-1 for beta hydroxybutyrate, increasing that conversion by 4 times. Study after study show peak power output, time trials, strength, and even muscle glycogen. The studies referenced in there also show that a fully adapted ketogenic athlete will have equal amounts, if not higher, muscle glycogen than a carbohydrate athlete, which sounds absolutely crazy. But remember, we make glucose. The body makes glucose through gluconeogenesis. We have the ability to create and store muscle glycogen. Lactate in the muscle is sent to the liver, where the liver will convert it into glycogen and send it back to the muscle at a higher rate than even a carbohydrate athlete. And this has been proven at muscle biopsy level. So during testing, what they did is they had carb athletes, fed them high carb shakes, ketogenic athletes who were adapted, and that is very important because all of the other studies prior to this and every other study that slates ketogenic for athletic ability is done on or based on studies that are 3 weeks or less in that adaptation process or period. You can't adapt within 3 weeks and expect to be producing beta hydroxybutyrate because the body wastes ketones, it wastes acetone, it wastes ketoacetate, it doesn't utilize beta hydroxybutyrate. This process takes an awful long time I'd say at least 12 weeks. I know Steve has referenced as much as 12 months, and even beyond. It does take time to upregulate it, and it is different for everybody. But 3 weeks certainly is not long enough. So any tests or studies that reference keto or fat athletes compared to carb athletes in a negative light have been done on groups of people who have only been ketogenic or been low carb, for example, for 3 weeks or less. Two of the major studies, one of which I think Louise Burke helped quite a lot within the athletic community, that was done on 3 weeks or less, and also they were not given sufficient electrolytes, which, as you know, when you become low carb ketogenic, insulin drops, the signal of the kidney to release sodium from the body, leading to a massive sodium deficiency. So we need electrolytes, we need sodium, potassium. So to not give this to an athlete who is adopting excuse me, a low carb ketogenic protocol is a big failure. And also these studies reference that they weren't fed adequate amounts of protein. So they were basing it on higher fat, lower protein. But protein is the magic ingredient. Protein feeds and repairs every cell in the body. Study after study has shown that, again, at muscle biopsy level, an adapted ketogenic athlete has the ability to carry just as much, and in some cases more, glycogen than even their carbohydrate counterpart, which I've discovered myself. If you remember last year, Steve, I wore a continuous blood glucose monitor. I did a run, a 10K run at Kempton. There was a gentleman there who was also running, who was type 2 diabetic. We compared blood glucose. My blood glucose prior to starting was like 3.2, which is technically a hypoglycemic range, but my body thrives on ketones, so that's a perfectly safe range for me. He was in the 6s. After the race, mine was 10.2, I think, or 10.6, and his had come down. So his had crashed despite carb loading and carb feeding and taking energy gels on this short 10K run, and mine had over tripled, which just shows how adaptive the body is and its ability in order to create glucose. Because remember, glucose is essential. When people say glucose is essential, we need it. But our body has the ability to make all of the glucose that we need for gluconeogenesis. I've done podcasts with Professor North, who would argue 90% of that in regards to our bodies will make most of it, but at high intensity we need additional amounts. I would argue against with what I have seen in regards to the athletes I've worked with. But either way, even if you were a fully adapted ketogenic athlete and you wanted glucose for any high intensity workout, which doesn't make sense, by the way, because that's fueled by the PC system, the phosphorecreatine energy system, and not the glycolytic energy system. But if they were an argument for exogenous glucose, then we would need 5 to 10 grams of glucose, which is hardly anything at all. So it certainly wouldn't be these 120 grams of carbohydrates that these companies are trying to sell you. It would be a fraction of that. And the reasons that they market and push all of these compounds and say that we need carbs is because Louise Burke is also sponsored by, I think, Gatorade or Lucozade, I think it's Gatorade. These athletes, these trainers and people in the public eye, they're all sponsored by sugar companies. One of the guys that I was working with, a semi-professional cyclist who was competing on a pro team, cycling in France last year, he did a ride, I think it was 4 hours at something like 366 watts on his bike at 92% of his VO2 max on zero carbs, which goes against everything that we've ever been taught. I asked him, I was sponsoring this guy. He asked if he could continue the sponsorship, but he was unable to promote the sponsorship and the products that I was sending. Being a small business, I couldn't afford to do that. But he explained that within that industry, he would be ostracized from that community if anyone found out that he was not consuming the product, or openly saying that, I'm using ketones or I'm ketogenic and I'm not using the sugar from the sugar companies that are sponsoring our team. Unfortunately, this is everywhere. Try it yourself and you'll soon see that being fully fat adapted will take your athletic performance to a completely different level.
Great stuff. So, Rich, your picture is much better and your sound is better, but it sounds like there's something in the background. some other sounds that we're picking up.
Yeah.
So
You chat
anyway,
away, I'll see what I can do with that now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So I've got a cup of coffee just being delivered as well. So right, we were talking about iodine, but I think I probably answered that. I will ask Rich maybe in a minute if he can add a little two penneth about it, or he might be happy that I've already answered it. So, Rich, there was a question about taking iodine. I did actually answer that. Did you want to mention anything about taking iodine on the carnivore diet, or are you quite happy to go on to the next question?
Yeah, look, I'm sure you are an iodine expert. I'm sure you've covered it. There are occasions not to take it, but it is a compound probably heavily devoid, and mostly to do with the consumption of cruciferous veg in regards to sulforaphane and flavonoids that are blocking the absorption of iodine at the thyroid. I think when we remove most of the vegetables, the body has the ability to absorb more of the iodine. That said, I'm not against supplementation unless you have issues with thyroid, but I'm sure you've covered it.
Okay. Can you move your microphone up a little bit higher, do you think? Because it was very clear just now, and it seems to have... What about that? Ah.
How was that?
Go and speak. That is perfect. That's a million times better. So I think what was happening was you were talking, it was coming out of your speaker and going into the mic. Right. Because a couple of people have left. They put in the comments, they just can't cope. Or anyway, right, Lainey, this is a great question. I get quite confused with the information about not under eating, but when you're supposed to only eat when you're hungry, but then you're only supposed to eat when you're hungry. Sometimes I'm not hungry and then I undereat a lot. What do I do? This is a brilliant question. So it depends on your background. If you've come back to this way of eating from calorie restriction or low fat, then you've trained your body to undereat. That's a sort of classic problem of people coming to carnivore. So you've actually told your body, this is what I do. I eat much less, and it lowers your metabolic rate, and it slows you down, and it makes you colder, or it makes you tired, and you sleep more, so you don't burn up, energy, basically. So we have to retrain our body, which is one of the reasons why some people talk about priming, which is where you sort of almost force yourself to have 3 meals and snacks as well, and just try to reset your body. Doesn't mean I'm saying you could do that, but that's where that's come from. So it is just a case of retraining your body and eating slightly more. And even if it's like twice a day, 3 times a day, and your leptin and your ghrelin, which are hormones that talk about your hunger and also your satiety, start to get reset. But it is a tricky one, especially if you've had eating disorders or you're absolutely obsessed with body composition. But you do have to get back to a proper way of eating, proper human diet, where you eat when you're hungry and you stop when you're full. This is one of the reasons I did reluctantly start a meal plan, because I do want it to be intuitive. But I had a couple of clients that weren't eating enough. So to have a little bit of guidance was quite handy. Doesn't mean that they ate everything I said, but they got back into a routine, and now they're sort of absolutely flying. Well, what do you think about this conundrum?
Yeah, look, I mean, what I would put over to Lainey is, what makes you think that you are under eating? Are you feeling lethargic? Are you feeling tired? If not, is your hair falling out? If not, are you suffering with any other condition? If not, are you actually under eating? Again, the human body needs far less than we believe. When we come from the whole carb-laden society in regards to, 5 fruit and veg a day and eating all of this this fiber and these anti-nutrients, because that's what fiber is, by the way. Fiber is an anti-nutrient. Fiber blocks the absorption of much of the nutrients found in the plants themselves. Flavonoids, for example, block the absorption of vitamin C, which in turn affects the absorption and utilization of protein, not to mention the other amino acids and even fats. Fiber has an effect on fat also. So then we need to eat more, because the body is consuming all of this food, but it's lacking nutrients. Now, when we remove the anti-nutrients, the body has the ability to absorb more of these nutrients, if not all of them. I mean, animal proteins are 100% bioavailable. Plants are not. So when we've removed the plant compounds, the fibrous compounds, the body needs less for the same amount of work. So we feel that we're under eating. We feel that we are not consuming enough. So that's a question that I would put over to Lainey is what makes you think you are under eating? If you feel fantastic, if your energy's through the roof, if your mental clarity is crystal clear, if your aches and pains are going away, brilliant. If you're suffering with hair loss, then this is a sign of under eating. Hair loss is one of the main drivers for or under eating is one of the main drivers of hair loss within the ketogenic carnivore community. And it's done so usually through extended fasting. So fasting is fantastic. I'm a big fan of fasting. I don't fast. And when I say that, that shocks a lot of people. Technically, I do. But again, I eat when I'm hungry. If I'm not hungry, I don't eat. It just so happens that I go 18, 20 hours a day without eating. But then I stuff my face. I eat an awful lot within that window. Other days, I will eat 3 meals, very large meals. I don't actively fast. Again, I eat intuitively. Now, the benefits of being in a ketogenic state, which is, or fasting even, the benefits of fasting, the reason that we fast is because of autophagy. Autophagy, this word that's flying around everywhere. We fast for autophagy, which is cellular repair and regeneration. The body takes old, sick, and dying cells and it creates new, younger, stronger, fitter, faster ones, which is fantastic. We also benefit from mitophagy, which is the same at the level of the mitochondria, insulin sensitivity, lipolysis, brown fat activation, so on and so forth. All of these responses are elicited even if we did not fast, but if we were to live in a ketogenic state. So if we were to just be ketogenic, all of these things are activated constantly. Yes, they are. One is predominant over the other in regards to mTOR and fasting or AMPK, but these things are constantly there. We don't need to fast to benefit from autophagy, mitophagy, and so on and so forth. So don't overfast. I'm a fan of fasting. I think it's a fantastic tool, but a lot of people will over-egg the fast. They'll fast for too long. They'll prolong the fast, and then they begin to lose hair because they are nutrient deficient. And that's the difference. If you're not suffering with any of these problems, then is there a problem? Are you actually under eating, or are you just eating less than your partner? Or are you eating less than you were previously and you think that you're under eating? But this is the only downside, Steve, isn't it, to the YouTube lives, is we receive a question, which is fantastic, and thank you all for leaving questions. We get a brief question, a brief description. We only have so much information to work with, and then we move on. Yes, that person may come back later down the line and put that information back in, by which time we've probably answered all the questions and the live is finished. This is why the live that Stephen and I go in or do every Monday in our private group, which is on our school group, which I'm sure Steve will pop a link in the comments. It's free to join. Stephen and I go live in this group every Monday at 5 p.m. for 40 minutes for a live Q&A through Zoom. So it gives the ability for the guests to join, come on screen if you want to. If you don't want to be on the screen, you can leave that switched off. You can type in a question. You can remain anonymous. We don't even have to know who you are. But it is good if you do, because we're building a community, and it's a fantastic community. It's an ideal opportunity to join the live. Come on, ask a question. We can go back and ask further questions, gather more information, and give you a better answer based on the information that you've come back with. So if you have the opportunity to join us at 5 p.m. GMT every Monday in our private school group, please do that. It is free to join, and it's a fantastic way to get in-depth questions answered. A perfect example last week, Stephen, wasn't it? One of our guests there asked a question, and it was back and forth for 4 or 5 different questions, and everybody was grateful for the answers, because they were all questions that they wanted to ask but didn't want to ask, and then we managed to get to the bottom of that and give that person some takeaways to action, and then we will touch base with them again tomorrow. But if you can, sign up to that because it is free.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, Tam, I will message you, by the way, about your wanting to cancel, because I do need your email address to do that. But anyway, right. Here's a question. I think this is one of the only areas where Rich and I have slightly different opinions, but this is what we want. Does stevia raise blood sugar? My bit is the cephalic response of anything, not stevia. Let's broaden this one out just to artificial sweetness. If your body is expecting sweetness, smell sweetness or taste sweetness, you can get a response. The cephalic response, the brain is full of receptors to signal what the body should do. All right. So it will get you ready for sugar. Now, can it raise your blood sugar or does it raise your insulin? That's the nuance, I think. The chances are it won't raise your blood sugar, but it will raise your insulin in expectation of blood sugar rising. So there's a biphasic response from the pancreas. You've got the granules coming out, and this is one of the problems. If we go even broader, this is one of the problems of refined carbohydrates or huge amounts of carbohydrates coming into the system, which are much more dangerous than stevia, for instance. Like cereals or refined grains, which hit the body much faster than nature intended. So you get this inappropriate elevated level of blood sugar coming in very quick. So it's very different to that response. It's very different. So you do get a small response in insulin for some people, and that's the other thing. So that's my two penneth. I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. I'm saying that for some people, it's other mechanisms you need to worry about with anything artificial. So if you're addicted to sugar, then it can have a problem because it can trigger your cravings for sugar. That's for some people. But in the main, it does seem to be well tolerated. So now I'll hand over to Rich.
Yeah, I mean, you say that we have differences in opinion. I agree. I think it is very individual. I think that there are various compounds on the market that will elicit almost a zero response in most people. Although you mentioned the biphasic response and the incretin effect, that can elicit a response via incretins, but it's very low, if at all, in most people in regards to stevia. Others which come along the same lines are erythritol, glycerol, and monk fruit. If you are going to use sweeteners, those would be my top four. Stevia in most people is well tolerated. It does nothing to my insulin or blood sugar, but it can with some people. Again, this sulfatic response, as you say, can have that incretin effect and cause a release in some people. When we look at sugars in general or sweeteners, they can create a dopaminergic and a cholinergic and opioid-like effects that mimic the impacts of psychostimulants like meth and cocaine, Adderall, and so on and so forth. They can block the prefrontal cortex, which is our brain's. That's what allows our brain to prevent us from making silly decisions. This is why some of us will race to the garage at 2 a.m. for a Mars bar, and to keep fueling those pathways can further elicit that response and continue to drive those cravings. But the artificial, out of the artificial sweeteners, sucralose and aspartame, they're all no-nos. Xylitol, I know some people are touting xylitol as being this new magical cure for gum health and so on and so forth. But 65% of xylitol, which is a polyol, can still be absorbed as carbohydrate. The people who are pushing this are the same type of people who believe that sulforaphane is beneficial to the body, and it's a known compound that causes clastogenesis, which is DNA damage. It unwinds our DNA and causes damage, which is visible through light microscopy, and we know this. So take that with a pinch of salt when people mention things like xylitol. The only two polyols technically that don't are erythritol, which are completely transported through the body without being absorbed. But then you would argue, well, why consume it if there's no benefit? But the benefit in that case would be that person's ability to adhere to a lifestyle. So if they are living a lifestyle and it takes that little treat or that little bit of stevia or erythritol in their tea or their coffee or their little keto bar to allow them to maintain the journey, then that is going to confer a benefit. And that's the first time I've said it tonight. Get your A2 milk shot glasses. So look, it's all about the rule and not the exception. This is what allows us to maintain the journey. If using these compounds allows you to do so, then fantastic. If you are lucky enough for it not to cause an insulin response, then even better. But those are by far the best on the market in order to do that. And I'll give you a perfect example. Steve, that I produce electrolytes that contain stevia. I've been asked by the community to produce an unflavored electrolyte that is stevia free, which I have done. It's disgusting. I drink it because I'm in this for health, but it tastes like salt water. Now, all of the hardcore carnivore people, I don't drink stevia, blah, blah, blah. It comes from a plant, which is fantastic. Make me an unflavored version. I've done it. I've made an unflavored version. Lots of these people have come back saying it's absolutely disgusting and they can't drink it. And now they've gone back to consuming the one that contains the stevia. So look, we're all human. And in order to maintain the lifestyle and achieve an adequate level of electrolytes that they need to maintain the lifestyle, they've gone back to my electrolytes, which do contain a little bit of stevia, very little, very little. Most of the sweetness comes from the vitamin C, a tiny little bit of stevia. But these products are out there. But the fact is that some of us are not as strict or as we think we are, or can't be as strict as we would like to be. So these offerings are there to allow us to maintain the journey. So in short, I agree. I think stevia can elicit a response in some people. I believe that it's negligible in most. I consume my electrolytes. The electrolytes that contain stevia, I consume the ones that don't, but I love the ones that do. It tastes like fruit juice. I don't drink fruit. I don't eat fruit even. I don't drink fruit either. But I find it really refreshing after running a 10K race and being absolutely exhausted. It's full of electrolytes, all the benefits, and I think it's fantastic. I'm thriving living my carnivore lifestyle, and I still consume that compound with a little bit of stevia. It's not causing me any harm. I understand that some of us want to live a more strict lifestyle, and that product is there for them. But there's far worse things to be worried about than stevia.
Okay, cool. Shout out to Richard for saving me last weekend. His electrolytes and BHB worked a treat to get me out of an extremely dehydrated state. That's from Carnivore Muscle. Good to see you, Jonathan. Thank you so much. Inns, hi. Is it still possible to get the benefits of the carnivore diet if you don't have resources to eat only beef, grass, finished quality? Yes. You don't have to have grass finished beef. I have people that do what's called feathers and fowl. So, feathers and fish. There's different ways of doing this. People can do it. But just poultry, honestly, it is about animal products. Obviously, beef is possibly the best source of protein for most people. I think Rich and I are on the same page when we think possibly lamb is actually better. So there you go. Fatty lamb is better. So, if you're eating eggs and you're eating salmon, let's say, that sounds pretty good to me. That sounds like a much better diet than cereal and sandwiches. So let's get really basic. Most animal products, well, I would say all of them, are better than the alternative. So what do you reckon, Rich?
Yeah, spot on, 100%. If you were eating eggs every day, if you're consuming salmon or chicken, even pork and bacon, you're on to a winner. Again, I agree, lamb, I would possibly argue, is even better than grass-fed beef. Lamb is always grass-fed. It's easy for us to say because it's in abundance in the UK. A little bit more difficult in the States, but if you can get your hands on lamb, then that is fantastic. It doesn't even have to be grass-fed, as you say. We are lucky again in the UK because the cattle live on the fields, they graze on the grass, they eat the grass all year round. The only possible negative within the UK in regards to grass-fed and grass-finished is the grass-finished part. They're not always finished on grass. That can affect the nutritional profile, but it's so negligible that the benefit conferred to eating that animal protein is going to outweigh any negative. But you can find these. It's easy to find a local farm that will do grass-fed, grass-finished, antibiotic-free, and all this, sort of stuff. It just support your local farmer. If you're UK-based, if you are in the States and you can't get hold of grass-fed beef, any beef is going to confer the benefit. Again, fish, poultry, any form of poultry that includes chickens, duck, goose, whatever it may be, and even bacon. And a lot of us within the community fear bacon or pork in general, but all of these are way more beneficial than living a plant-based lifestyle. And we probably won't have enough time to get into the reasons why within the 4 minutes left. But yes is the answer to that. Fish is a fantastic source. I mean, you could just thrive on eating fish and eggs even. So even if you didn't want to eat animals, if you could eat an egg every day and a piece of fish, you were going to be exponentially healthier than you were if you were not consuming those.
Yeah. So yeah, just to say to people who have kindly posted questions, we like to answer the questions properly and fully. So there's two things you can do if you don't get your question answered tonight, because it's only 60 minutes here on this platform. Then we get another half hour on another platform in a minute, which I'll give you the link to. You can do a super chat to push your question up to the top. We're not in this to make lots of money on super chats. I think I haven't had a super chat for about a month. So, but it does push your question up because we appreciate the donation. It does help us. All right. So you can either see us on the next platform or come back next week and put your question before we even go on air. Just put it on the YouTube in the comments and we'll do it first. Anyway, Janet is saying, for a postmenopausal woman, is creatine supplements good, or can you get everything from meat?
Double-edged question. Yes, you can get everything from meat. If you were to eat a kilo of beef per day, for example, this would give around 5 grams of creatine, which is fantastic. Creatine is brilliant for the body. It's brilliant for healing and repairing the body, but it's also very good for the brain. It's a fantastic compound for the brain. We can obtain everything through diet, but for me, I find 15 grams a day is optimal for health in general, in regards to athletic performance, strength, and brain health. If you weren't lifting or training as much, then you could probably manage comfortably on less than 5 grams. So I think it is situational based, but creatine is one of those compounds that is simply wasted if it's not used. You're not going to cause any harm. All of these studies that were based on creatine causing kidney damage have been disproven. We've seen the same in regards to meat consumption. Meat consumption, protein consumption is actually very beneficial for the kidneys. You don't even need to cycle creatine monohydrate. I don't think it's preference for endurance athletes. Personally, it doesn't work for me in regards to running because it tightens everything up, and on long runs and things, calves and my lower back begin to tighten. But for power and strength, I think it's a fantastic compound. But I do eat a kilo of meat per day minimum. So, I mean, I am still achieving that 5 grams of creatine monohydrate, but I'm certainly not against supplementation of creatine monohydrate.
Excellent. Yeah, so that wraps up our 60 minutes, or we're on 58 minutes, 15 seconds now. But we need time just to say we're going to a different platform now, which rhymes with apple crumble. On this platform, they don't like us saying the name. In the chat, I have put the link to our next 30 minutes, which we can see you over there. There's already 13 people waiting and a question already in the live chat waiting for us. So all you got to do is click that in the live chat if you want to see the live next 30 minutes. We'll have to repost a question if you've put one here and it hasn't been answered. By the way, if you're upset that it hasn't been answered, remember when we do get to your question, you'll get a full answer. So how about that? So that's that. Secondly, what was I going to say secondly? Secondly is thank you very much. I'd like to see you next week, which would be really good. It's also in the description to this video on YouTube, the link to the next platform. So if you're watching this and it's not live and you want to know the next 30 minutes, that link is there too. All right. So you'll be able to go and see this other platform. So from me, I'd like to say goodbye. And from the UK's top nutritionist, as seen on TV, I'm sure he's going to say goodbye as well.
Thank you all. Goodbye, and see you on the other channel, hopefully.
Yeah, we are. See you later.